Hi there. And hi, Chrissy. Chrissy just finished warming up. That's awesome. So, today we're talking about strengthening or building our head voice. And let me give you a bird's eye view of what to expect from this lesson. This is an hour long. If you're here live, the last 15 minutes are set aside for Q&A. Up to that point, though, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat as we go along. Definitely ask if anything is confusing or you need clarification. Just know that those last 15 minutes are there for you. So, we will talk about, and hello, Pete. We're going to talk about the importance of starting lightly. I know our whole goal here is building and strengthening head voice, but we'll talk about the importance of starting light and how if your head voice is breathy or weak in the beginning, that's really okay. And it's so normal. I can't even tell you. It's yeah, across the board, most people have a weak or breathy, undeveloped head voice, simply because it's not a mode that we use often in daily life. We use our chest voice or our speaking voice function. So, of course, it makes sense that that other function, whoo, our head voice, is weak. It's underutilized. We're going to talk about training our onset. Your onset is the way that you begin a note. And the way you begin it is typically the way you're going to sing it. So if I start weakly, I'm probably not going to find strength halfway through that note. Whereas if I start with a cleaner onset, I'm going to have more clarity in my tone. I can go even further in that direction. Ah, I wouldn't recommend doing that all the time. But, anyways, that's training our onset. We're going to talk about using bright vowels. We'll talk about cry quality and bratty sounds, the utility of those. We'll talk a little bit about twang and we'll see how far we get through all of that. Before we jump back into the importance of starting lightly, I just want to share a little bit about my own journey with head voice. I've been singing since I could talk. And I also took voice lessons at a young age. I did musical theater, sang pop. I did not like my head voice. I avoided it. And so it was very uncomfortable for me taking classical singing lessons. I had a wonderful teacher, but you'll know classical singing or kind of, operatic singing, it does require a lot of head voice usage, and I hated it. I just avoided it. I wanted to belt everything. And then fast forward, I decide to pursue music. I'm in college for music education, and I have not really trained my head voice all that time. I'm just really comfortable in chest voice, and that's where I want to live. And then in college, they make you do classical lessons, or at least at my school, they make you do classical lessons for 2 full years before you get to specialize into any other genre. And I all of the sudden had to sing in head voice constantly. And again, I didn't like it. But over the course of, I would say, even just that first semester, just being forced to sing in head voice so much ended up being a wonderful thing for me. I came to the point where I actually loved singing in head voice and even preferred it to my chest voice because I could sing for so long using that head voice function without tiring out. Um, it also helped me to develop my mix. And so if you are kind of at the start of your singing journey, if you hate your head voice, don't like the way it sounds, think it's breathy or weak, just know that I've been in your shoes and I'm on the other side of it. And I can say making friends with your head voice is a really, really good thing. So, first off, and hi, Krista and Lucifer as well. Um, so, first, we need to talk about the importance of starting lightly with your head voice. We have to access your head voice or falsetto mode, which is a different way of making sound. Of course, it involves the same muscle, the same tissue, all of that, but it's a different way of making sound. So, the issue that singers will run into when they want a strong head voice is they'll approach it just the same way that they approach their chest voice. And they inevitably hit a ceiling. So to sing higher in chest voice, typically we're just adding volume and strength, Ah, and if you try to carry that into your head voice, uh, even if you make it to more of a head voice mode, uh, that's not the sound we're going for. And oftentimes the transition isn't even that smooth. What I'll see more often with beginning singers is they're unable to find their head voice because all they know how to do is strong, loud chest voice. Um, so Anyways, it's important that we get out of chest voice land and learn sounds that help us access that higher, lighter, thinner vocal fold function. So, my favorite sounds to do that would be the owl hoot, whoo, whoo, or the cuckoo clock, cuckoo, cuckoo. It's important that you make it a dark, rich, hollow sound. Cuckoo. What that does is it helps your larynx or your voice box, your Adam's apple would be the front of that. Um, it helps your larynx to stay in a lower position, and that's not where it needs to stay forever. Not saying that a low larynx needs to always be the way that you access your head voice. But in the beginning, it's really, really helpful because what happens, again, when we're just dragging up chest voice, typically what happens, your larynx is rising with the pitch. And when your larynx rises, it's a lot easier for you to squeeze and overly compress those vocal folds. And that inhibits us from finding the stretch, the lightness that we need for head voice. So that dark, dopey, hollow sound is extremely helpful for singers. I would say what's also helpful for singers is starting in head voice. I know this is counterintuitive. Usually we're like, oh no, start low and then gradually go high. But the difficulty with that is you then kind of get stuck in chest voice mode. Like my demonstration before, if you're used to singing, it's really difficult to then find that lightness. So, what I'll do with beginning singers or just singers who are not used to their head voice is we don't even touch chest voice. We will just start around here, maybe. Hi, Austin. And Mark was saying, I'm the opposite. I prefer my high chest to head voice. Interesting. Grass is always greener. Um, so, for singers who are new to head voice, we'll start on maybe an A4, this pitch right here. And if you're a lower voice, careful that you're not singing this pitch. This is the one we want. And we'll just make noise up there. I'll ask you to go, woohoo, like you're excited, woohoo, woohoo, or like you're doing a Mickey Mouse impression, or again, like you're pretending to be an owl, woo, woo, or a cuckoo clock, cuckoo. So that's where we start, just finding this function, and then we'll add pitches to it. We'll get in that mode. But again, it's a very, very light sound. And you can see previous live lessons on accessing head voice and especially head voice for lower voiced singers. That would be very helpful for you. Hopefully that makes sense. We start light with head voice or falsetto because we are approaching it differently than we would our chest voice. So now that we are accessing our head voice, I'm going to assume that you're accessing your head voice. It's just maybe weaker or breathier than you want it to be. Then we can start building strength in that area. So let's talk first about training our onset. Remember, I said before the way that you begin a note is typically the way you're going to sing it. So I want to talk about a few different types of onset that we have. We have a breathy or what's called aspirate onset, and that's where we're starting with air and then the vocal folds come together. So if you say the word Hi, and linger for a second on the H. Hi. You'll notice there's airflow and then your vocal folds come together. If you start singing in this way, ha, ha, try it. And you're going to notice that the sound, once you do start singing, is also pretty breathy. It would not be typical to go, ah. It just doesn't really happen. So if you're starting with air, ah, typically you're going to get a very light, breathy sound. All right, so that was breathy or aspirate onset. That means air first and then vocal folds come together. We also have what we might call a balanced onset. That's where our airflow and our vocal folds coming together are happening pretty much simultaneously. So if you say the word you, you, you're going to notice there wasn't airflow at the start. There wasn't anything really happening. You just started to make sound. You, you, you. And even if you try that up in your head voice, you're going to have a way stronger sound than that gave you. So the word you. And then we have another type of onset that we might call glottal onset. So, glottal onset is where your vocal folds come together before you start to make sound. So, you have vocal folds coming together, stopping up that airflow, and then vibration and airflow. So, if you say the word apple, apple, that would be what we call a glottal onset. If you say uh-oh, uh-oh, you can hear it even more clearly, both at the start of the and then between the and the o. Uh-oh, uh-oh, and that kind of stopping in between. Linger there and just notice what that feels like. Uh, uh, you can really feel that something has closed. Your vocal folds have closed and they're preventing that air from flowing. So don't stop for too long. I don't want you to pass out. Um, but we have these different types of onset. In the beginning, when you're wanting to train a stronger sound in head voice, you might err on the side of that glottal onset. So you might say, apple. Is it a pretty sound? No, but it's a lot stronger than what the default might be. Ah. And Mark is asking, is that the same as a glottal stop? So a glottal stop would be where we're stopping that sound. Uh oh, uh, uh. um, Glottal onset, we're starting our sound a with the vocal folds closed. Um, so I really liked this. A fellow voice teacher on TikTok mentioned this sentence. He said the sentence, "How are you?" uses those three main types of onset. So, how, that would be breathy or aspirate. Are, that would be the glottal onset where we have closure at the start. And then you is that nice balanced onset. It's worth noting that balanced onset is our default mode of singing. We don't want to be going, ah, ah, ah. No. Ah. We want to be, flowing nicely. A balanced onset is easiest on our vocal folds and typically results in the best sound, but glottal onset is good to have in your back pocket. Um, so I want you to try this with me. Little exercise just on one pitch, and I'll have you try it first just in your chest voice, and then we'll try it in head voice. So the exercise will go like this. We're going to say ha, 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 like we're laughing, maybe sarcastically. Ha, ha, ha. And now, ah, 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 ah. like you're about to say, uh-oh, uh-oh. And then see if you can find the middle ground between those two. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, so we're going breathy. We're like at two extremes, breathy, and then glottal, and then try to find balance. So ha ha first. Ha, ha, ha. And now glottal. Ah, ah, ah. And now somewhere in between. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, let's try that on a higher pitch in head voice. And you can do this on any vowel you like. I'm going to try an ooh vowel, and I'll be up here on a pitch that I think most of us can sing in our head voice or falsetto. So that would be this one right here. Ooh. So let's try hoo first on that pitch. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Notice how breathy that tone is. Now give me the glottal. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Maybe feeling a little bit like a monkey. Ooh, 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 ooh. And don't worry about the beauty of the sound. It's really not supposed to be pretty yet. And now see if you can find a middle ground between ooh and ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, something more balanced. It's okay if you are falling on one side or the other as you're learning this control. Um, it's it's a new coordination, right? And Chrissy is asking, you want us to mix early. Let me know what you mean by that. What do you mean by early? Um, okay, so one exercise that might incorporate something like this. I learned this from another voice teacher and I used it for a while. I haven't used it in a couple years, but it popped into my head right now. So I'm going to share it with you. That voice teacher's name was Felicia Ricci, if you ever saw her on YouTube. So she did this exercise that goes like this. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. And that rearticulation of the ah, ah, ah. Yeah, Phil. I loved her too. So Chrissy, I'm not we're not so much talking about the different passagios. I'm just choosing a pitch that I think everyone can access in head voice. So you're so right. If you are a higher voiced singer, you would typically not be in head voice that low. However, for my low voiced singers, tenors, baritones, basses, I just know that all of us can access head voice function on that pitch, but you don't have to be there. You can sing much higher than that. So past, your second zone. Totally fine by me. You don't have to use the pitches that I'm giving. Okay, so here's this exercise again. Sounds like this. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. And it's on the repetitions that we're going for that balanced onset. If you want to give me a slight glottal, ah, 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 that's all right too. All I don't want is something that sounds and feels really harsh. Ah, ah, ah. No, we don't need to go that crazy. So either in ah, 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 balanced, or a little bit of a glottal. Ah, ah, ah. Like you're saying, all right. Give it a try. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Walking up. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Last one. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Walking back down, and we'll go lower for low voices. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. And by the way, if you're a super high voice, you could be up an octave right now. That'd be really high, but you could. Z, starting there. Here you go. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Notice we're also starting in chest voice to get a little bit of grounding. Z, Z, Z. And then we're jumping an octave into head voice. So we're not carrying the weight of chest voice up with us, but we are getting a little bit of connection going just from the start. Here you go. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Low voices continue. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Maybe one more. Z, 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 ah, 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 Z, Z. Cool. Not going to go too much lower than that because that high note was an E4, and most of us aren't singing lower than that in head voice, regardless of voice type. Okay, so file that exercise away, file that sentence away. How are you? Yeah, and Chrissy is asking about leaning and getting the mix sound. Absolutely. Today's focus is really on head voice, but if you ask the difference between what's a strong head voice and a light mix, they're very, very similar. So, okay, so next, Chrissy, you might like this. We're going to use some brighter vowels. So when we say bright, I know that's weird because we're describing sound, and how can a sound be bright? But think about the tone quality of a trumpet versus the tone quality of a cello. So that would be a very bright tone quality, being the trumpet, bum, 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 versus the cello being dark, warm, rich. Okay, these are ways that we describe sound, and I know they don't make all that much sense unless you've been around that kind of vocabulary. But bright vowels, we produce brighter vowels with a slightly higher larynx. Examples would be an E vowel, he, an A vowel, hey, an A vowel as in cat, ah. And you'll notice there's brightness or almost nasality. You could call it that too. Compare that to what we might call dark vowels. Ooh, oh, okay, so the utility of these vowels, I know we talked about the larynx being low for those hooty, uh, you know, hollow sounds before. But once you're comfortable getting into head voice without just jamming up and staying in chest voice, then we can start to play with that laryngeal height. And we're going to do that primarily through our vowels. So just notice the difference in strength. Passaggio and leaning and what they mean. So, Mark, Chrissy was referring when we talk about passaggio, she's talking about the transition points between chest and mix, and then mix and head voice. And Chrissy, you can definitely answer that if you would like. And then leaning. Oh, and by the way, in classical singing world, there are kind of set points where that happens for different voice types. So you have your, first passage and your second passage. For contemporary singing, that also sort of exists, but less rigidly than it does in classical singing world, and less voice type specific. And then leaning, what I interpret that to mean, but Chrissy, you can weigh in if you meant something else. Leaning, I would think that's leaning with our body or our support, leaning into the sound a little bit. But let me know if that's not what you meant. Okay, so listen to the difference in tone quality and strength when we sing on dark vowels versus some of those brighter vowels. Again, it's okay that it's not super gorgeous right now. Just compare the difference in strength, because that's what we're going for. We're going for building strength. So go, for example, from an, let's say, an oo to an ah. Any pitch you like. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. And I'm not trying to sound stronger or louder on that ah vowel. It's just naturally happening because of the vowel. So try those different vowels out. The ones I'm suggesting for brightness and strength are e, a, and ah. And then we can use exercises with those bright vowels in the syllable, or we can transfer from a bright vowel to another vowel that tends to kind of be weaker. So, for example, we might start here and sing on a na, 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 or may, may. And we're just naturally going to get more strength in that sound than if we were singing goo, 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 goo. Again, I kind of prefer the tone of the oo, but it does have less strength. And in the beginning, we can use those bright vowels to boost our strength. So try a few of these with me. Let's use really any consonant you like. I don't care what consonant you use, but choose a vowel like E, A, or A. Oh, thanks, Chrissy. So let's go. I'm just going to demonstrate on ma. Ma, 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 ma. And let me decide on a rhythm. We'll go ma, 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 ma. Don't try to make it pretty, just nice and bright. Ma, 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 ma. If you like E or A better, use that. Ma, 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 ma. Ma, 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 ma. Ma, 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 ma. Ma, 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 ma. Okay, you're going to probably reach a point where that super bright vowel stops working. So I was kind of reaching it there. I started to feel myself going just a little bit flat. So I might not continue on a straight up a vowel. I might have to modify a little bit. Ma, 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 ma. More like meh. And by the way, they see me trolling. If you need to be down an octave, you definitely can. All good. Okay, so if that gave you more strength than you normally have in a head voice warm up, and again, the difference between a strong head voice and a mix, I'm not going to split hairs. To someone, they might say, hey, that's not head voice, that's mix. But what's really the difference? Okay, and Chrissy was saying, I go up to E5, working on extending. Okay, we were almost there. Here we are. Ma, 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 ma. So ma stopped working for me right there. I could not hang on to the ma, 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 ma without really forcing it. But hey, you could. I'm just trying to not hurt your ears. If you wanted to continue, I would suggest you might have a little bit more success on something like an E up there rather than an A. But hey, you do you. Okay, second way we can use these bright vowels is to use them kind of as training wheels and then go to a vowel that might be a little bit weaker for you. So for example, I could start on a ma, ma, ma. if my ah usually sounds like ah and is really breathy. Or oh, ma, ma, mo. So I'm finding that strength on that bright vowel. Oh, and then I'm transferring it over to a vowel that tends to be a little bit darker and maybe weaker. Okay. Mark. Okay, got it. Mark is referencing a lesson that we had. So next two things we can use, and we're kind of in that territory already, is cry quality and bratty sounds. So cry quality, I used a cry pouty exercise with this one student who I had run through everything I usually use and it wasn't working to help the student just get into their head voice. Um, and it was the pouty "y" or "mum" that ended up working for them. The cry quality, so without cry, we would just sing "mum, mum, 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 mum," with a little bit of a pout, "mum, mum, 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 mum," or "why." We're a little bit pouty, helps the larynx to tilt, and it's also easy for those vocal folds to come together. So let's try a pouty mum 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 or why. I'm gonna start lower this time just for low voices. I don't want to leave low voices out. So start right here and go. High voices, you can jump in. So we're singing mum 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 or why kind of pouty. Why or may. May. Why? 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 You could keep going if you want, but most of us are probably ready to come back down. With any of these exercises, by the way, you can develop them by repeating that top note or sustaining that top note. So, for example, let's say you going why, and then you're like, okay, that's feeling pretty strong. It's not terribly loud, but it is strong. It's not breathy. So then you might say, hey, let me try to challenge that a little bit. Let me repeat the top note. So instead of just once on top, we typically, to make it a singable rhythm, we repeat 1, 2, 3, 4 times on top. So you would sing why. And then if that's still feeling good, you could sustain why. Again, try not to judge the sound. When we're working on strength, we're working on strength. And you can adjust the tone with your vowel and your soft palate position. All kinds of things can be adjusted. But it's super, super helpful to just focus on strength, simplify your life, and not worry about the beauty. Alice, is it true that we need to hear the cry quality in the mix voice? Oh, so I would say no, not all the time. Um, at least I don't think so. I think mix is multifaceted, it's a big umbrella. Um, and I think some singers just tend to have more of that quality in their mix than others, either just naturally or that's the way that they learned. Um, but no, I do not think that that's necessary. Um, it is common though. You do kind of hear that, and you'll hear singers kind of cry into notes as well. That tends to help them. Necessary though, I would say no. Um, okay, similarly, bratty sounds, similar benefits to this cry quality. Um, Nasal sounds also helpful. So again, when we're in head voice, maybe our default is to be ooh, and it might not be beautiful to sing na 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 na. It's not beautiful at all. No one wants to hear that. But super helpful tool. So, same idea here. You're just using that sound, seeing if it helps you to find stronger connection. And really, really important to understand that it doesn't have to be super loud. Um, what we're going for first is just clarity of tone. So from "Ooh, really breathy," ah, it's not loud, not blowing the roof off, but you can hear the clarity of tone is way, way better. And then we can build volume on top of that. Um, so, okay, these bratty sounds, I will not torture you by singing a bunch of them, but I just want to demonstrate um, that we can start really bratty. Na, 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 na. And then we can adjust the vowel. So from na, maybe to na. Na, 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 na. Maybe to na. Na, 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 na. And we still have strength, maybe not quite as much perceived strength as nah, coming right at you. Um, but that's a way that we can use this bratty sound or the cry sound, whatever it is, as a tool, as training wheels, and then loosen the training wheels and what we might call, dialing back the intensity or dialing back the level of exaggeration of that sound. So, bratty sounds, nasal sounds, also good. What's crazy in my lesson plan today is that not once did I mention SOVTs. And if you're not in the habit of using SOVTs, those are semi occluded or semi closed vocal tract exercises. Those include the lip trill, the NG, that's probably my favorite for head voice. Um, Singing through a straw, a pufferfish. Okay, all of these are really, really effective. And, I don't know why they didn't make it onto my lesson plan, but hey, we're saying it now. SOVTs are your best friend for warming up. And when done properly, they can also help you with cord closure, which will help us with strength in our head voice. But a big, big caveat, if you're using a lip trill and it's a super breathy lip trill, like that's not going to help me. Ah, that's the kind of sound I'm training if my lip trill has that much air in it. So even in a lip trill, I want that clarity of tone. So just a warning there. You're less likely to run into that issue on something like singing through a straw. An NG can also go really breathy. Mm, mm. And again, what we want is not necessarily a super loud, but focused tone. That'll help me. Okay. So, last little tip for building strength in head voice, twang. And twang is one of those topics that the understanding of twang is kind of evolving a bit. Um, Used to be one thing and now is a couple different things. But I just want to teach you this exercise that I learned recently from a teacher, Carrie Obert, teacher and researcher. She's awesome, and she has studied twang. Uh, and Lily's asking, as we do these exercises more, will the breathiness eventually go away? Yes. So that is my experience, Lily, but it does take time. And I'm glad that you're bringing that up. These exercises might not be an instant, quick fix, but listen for progress. Listen for, is the tone less breathy? What's helping me the most to get that clarity of tone? Um, and yeah, lip trills, you guys probably know that I love them, but they're not for everybody, and you can leave them behind if you need to. Okay, so twang. I really loved this exercise. Again, the teacher researcher I learned it from is Carrie Obert, and the idea here is that we're learning to retract or bring back just the back of our tongue. The way we're going to do that is we're going to sing an ah, then an E, and we're going to feel the back of our tongue come up a little bit. Then we're going to go back to ah. So the front of the tongue comes back forward, but the back of the tongue is still raised. So what it's going to sound like is this. I'll choose a random pitch. And notice the difference in strength and clarity um, from the first ah to the second ah. The second ah, way, way stronger. Okay, again, regular ah. Give it a try. Go nice and slow. Again, the idea here on the E vowel, your tongue, the back of your tongue is going to come up. And then when you sing the ah, we're going to try to keep the back of the tongue up so we have that nice, bright, twangy boost to the sound. And then once you get comfortable with that tongue position, you'll have an easier time finding it from the start without having to use that tool. Another idea for getting a little bit of ring related to twang would be using sounds. I had a teacher who used a lot of rolled R's, kind of for the same reason. But again, the we're retracting the back of the tongue, and you'll hear that boost of energy that occurs. So we're seeing if we can hold on to that energy in that position as we move to a different vowel. Okay, and then last, we actually did really well on time, but it's time for Q&A in just a minute here. So my last thing kind of piggybacks off of what Lily said. My last note for you is to give yourself time. And to have some tonal models, some singers that you listen to who have a strong, nicely developed head voice. If you are exclusively listening to singers who don't use head voice much or who kind of use more of that lighter, breathy sound, which is really pretty. But if that's your tonal model, then that's what you're going to be imitating and mimicking. So I would recommend, it doesn't have to be opera, but maybe some musical theater, maybe some jazz, some styles that do incorporate a bit of a stronger head voice sound so that that's what you're listening to and mimicking. Yeah. So Chrissy is saying pulled chest and metal, that might not do much for a tonal model for a strong developed head voice, but hey, I don't know. Austin's music, what would you recommend I do to my tone? Ooh. So Austin, this might be I actually like this idea. Let's do this. Austin is asking for some feedback and hey, we're here. Let's do it. The only unfortunate thing is I can't screen share. Um, but I will listen a little bit, and if you guys also wanna listen, me on your mind, that's what we're looking for. So Austin's music, me on your mind. Okay, so I'm pressing play. You won't be able to hear it though. You'll have to listen on your own, good people at home. So I like having this other angle. Um, Austin had, an angle right straight on, and then now I'm seeing a profile. So profile is helpful because I can see a little bit more of your mouth position. So the main thing that I would say, Austin, is that you can use more space inside your mouth. So da 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 da. That's a different sound than da na 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 na. And yes, I'm exaggerating, but if I don't open my mouth very much and don't have a lot of internal space, the sound tends to be smaller and thinner than it could be if you were utilizing all that your instrument has to offer. So that's really the main thing that I would suggest tone wise is perhaps singing in front of a mirror and singing on a syllable that makes it a little bit easier for you to get that space. When I say space internally, that's important because I don't just mean drop your jaw. If all you do is drop your jaw, but you don't have space inside your mouth, that doesn't do good things to our sound. We also need space inside the mouth. So, easy way to do that is to inhale with an open mouth and feel all that space in your mouth and your throat. And then again, sing on a syllable like ba 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 or ma 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 and get used to singing with a little bit more internal space. I hope that helps. Alice had a question. Can you please explain why the NG exercise is useful? I'm not sure what my goal is when exercising on an NG. Sure. So, an NG exercise I like because it provides closure. Um, and anytime we have closure, we typically are going to have some back pressure on the vocal folds. Um, and cool, awesome, Page of Moons. Um, we're going to have back pressure on the vocal folds, meaning instead of just our air coming up and our vocal folds, solely responsible to hold back that air. When I have back pressure, now I have air coming back to the vocal folds. So it's easier for them to function. Um, the NG as well, I like because it allows us to use something semi closed but have our jaw dropped. So the thing I don't like about the lip trill is our mouth is closed. So sometimes it doesn't transfer as easily. On the NG, transfers really easily because all I need to do to go from NG to a vowel is just lower the back of my tongue a little bit or raise my soft palate a little bit, as Chrissy was saying. Ah. And Chrissy was also saying helps your mix for a lot of singers. That NG sound helps them to transition a little bit more smoothly between their chest voice and head voice. Um, so those are my main reasons. The tongue position as well tends to be kind of helpful, kind of a little bit of an arched tongue, but relaxed in the front. As opposed to with my tongue just kind of being flat in the mouth. Um, so hey, I'm gonna keep listening to Austin's cover here, but more questions are welcome. Austin, was there any specific spot where you felt like you were struggling with tuning? Um, I might not be as picky as you are, but let's see. Sure thing, Alice. So I'm listening to the chorus. I would say in general, you might be sitting like the teeniest bit high, but it's so subtle. It's so, so subtle that I wouldn't even correct that. It's just maybe the tendency is to be a teeny, teeny bit high. And if you're not aware of that and you start going actually sharp, then that could be an issue, but it's not jumping out to my ear as a problem. I only heard one thing, I think it was on price. Let me see. No. Oh, it was on Life. You gave your life. That little fall off just didn't sound like you confidently knew exactly what pitches you were falling to. So that jumped out to my ear, but nothing else has jumped out. And I think, yeah, you sound great. Yeah. Great job, Austin. Yeah, just take a look at the life and decide what pitches are you falling to so that you can confidently sing those clearly. Mark, can I get your advice on breath control as I often have trouble where I either take too big a breath so I'm left with all this leftover air or not enough and I'm struggling to push through to finish the sentence. Um so here's something to consider. Um cuz this is tricky. This is tricky cuz anytime we have a vocal warm up, we basically are taking the same amount of breath each time, right? Because the phrase never changes length. We're, da 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 da, and we're just, taking the same amount of breath. Whereas within a song, the amount of breath you're going to need for each phrase is going to vary because the demands of that phrase and the length of that phrase is also going to vary. Um, I don't know what specific advice to give you, Mark, other than take note of what the specific issue is on that phrase so that it doesn't catch you off guard next time. So if you know, "Ooh, okay, this is the phrase that I tend to take too much breath for," then you might write yourself a note that says, "Hold off," or "small breath," or, even "don't breathe, just connect from the last phrase," kind of thing. Uh, but yeah, I guess the only other kind of exercise that I could think of would be where you're varying the length of time that, say, you're hissing or singing for. Um, so maybe you're doing, an 8 count and then a 12 count and then a 4 count and then an 8 count and then a 4 count, if that makes sense. So that you're preparing for different length phrases, with your the size of your breath. That's my only, like, exercise idea. Um, okay. Oh, COVID and recovery. So, I don't have personal experience. I have had COVID, but my voice wasn't affected too much. I didn't get the cough, which I was so grateful for. Um, but I I have done some live lessons on recovery and vocal health. So let me see if I can find those for you. Um, maybe rehab, how to sing. Yeah. Okay. How to sing when your voice is recovering, singing after illness or strain. So I'm going to put this in the chat. There you go. That'll be a better answer. And that's another hour-long live lesson. It might not be as COVID specific with the breathing impact, but that should give you some exercises and principles. Um, and what's your advice for extending range? Extending range, we've also covered for sure. So my uh, general advice is going to be use the tools and exercises that work for you um, in those specific zones. Because the way that we extend our low chest voice is going to be a totally different animal than the way we extend our high head voice or our mix. So I would definitely watch that. The uh, link that I just shared was vocal range extension, another hour-long live lesson. And then let me see. Um, I think there's another one. Vocal range extension for each register. So here's another one that should help you out and be a better answer than I can give you in a minute. Um, for Suddenly Seymour, what notes would you give me? Suddenly Seymour, it's a belty song. I would say, um, as with any belty song, kind of starting with a syllable that feels easy for you is going to be number one. Make sure you're warming up and kind of getting into belt mode before you attempt to sing that song. But yeah, I would drop the lyrics and sing on whatever helps you. So yeah, any helpful syllable. And then also with any song where we're belting, vowel modification is going to be your best friend. Um, I'm thinking about, "Da-na-na-na-na, you don't understand," or "don't," whatever the word is, but I feel like it ends in an "ah." Um, and that might be a an instance in which you're getting a little bit shouty or too heavy or unstable, and a little bit of vowel modification, kind of moving toward instead of ah might be helpful for you. But that's off the top of my head. Passaggio. So, Alice, if you're talking about classical world, um, 2. And let me find for you good kind of more in-depth article on this. So this is from Karen O'Connor of Singwise. It's an article that she wrote on singing range and vocal fach or voice type. And here's a yeah, that this would be yeah, Karen's great. Um, I would check that out. The thing is, as I mentioned before, for contemporary singing, not classical singing, we still do have probably 2 transition points. So for upper voices, typically we're transitioning into at or A4, lower voice. Um, and then your second passage typically would be somewhere between D4, or D5, E flat 5, E5 for high voices. So those transition points do still exist, but again, they're not quite as specific and you know, structured. Okay, cool. Well, I love how you guys are connecting. I hope that me ending this stream uh will not disrupt anything, Austin and Mark. Um, but you guys have each other's channel handles, so that's good. I love it. Connections. All right, my friends, I will see you next week. We're going to talk about some singing myths, I think. I think that's what's scheduled. We'll see. Okay. See ya. Bye.